What would it be like to swim 22 miles across Lake Tahoe, complete 15 Ironmans, and tackle a 400-mile nonstop gravel bike race, all while staying in a state of Zen flow? If you think peak endurance is about grinding harder, think again.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Today, we're joined by Brett Blankner, endurance athlete, coach, and host of the Zen and the Art of Triathlon podcast. Brett has spent decades pushing himself to the limits, not through brute force, but by training smarter, not harder. From ultramarathons to multi-day self-supported Ironmans, he's discovered how mindfulness, relaxation, and pacing can unlock next-level endurance. He's here to share why most people try too hard, too soon, and never get beyond average, how going easy actually makes you faster, and how you can use long endurance efforts to meditate, plan, and transform your mindset. This is perfect, Brett, right on the tail end of some of the conversations that we've had recently. And I don't know if you know, but I'm doing a physique competition in August, and I've been going real hard, and I'm starting to feel a little tired, which we'll discuss on our upcoming interview about that. But I'm starting to feel tired, so this may be very helpful for me. So Brett, welcome to the show. We're excited to get into this.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I found out about your show a few months ago and cannot believe that I did not find it sooner, and I wish I hadn't. I think the competition.
What are we doing wrong? We've got to market it better.
I don't know, because your marketing is great, but
Thank you.
You guys together is both. It's such an unusual on the surface, like connection that. But it's two things that are like wildly different that come together that can create something totally new. That I think
right.
Brilliant. When I found out both of y'all's backgrounds, I could not listen. Like
well, thank you for that. That's awesome. That's one of the reasons we started, and we love the mix. And when you peel back the onion, Will and I have a lot more in common than you think on surface level, like you said. But we're excited to come together as kind of the yin and yang. And talking about that, Will, brother, great to see you, man.
Yeah, great to be here. And it's great, to have someone comment about our podcast who's been running his own podcast for how many, 14 years?
Since 2005.
Since 2005.
That's crazy,
Talk
man.
about an OG. 19 years. Brett, it's great to have you here. Thank you. Just, hey, for everyone out there, we can use your help. Right? Actually, if you would like to sponsor the show, please sponsor the show. Head to mentalkingmindfulness.com where you can learn about our 5 different tiers of sponsorship. We really appreciate your support. We just want to keep this show moving forward. So if you have, a few bucks or a lot more bucks, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com and sponsor the show. We're just going to start one breath grounding practice, Brett. I'm sure you use breathing all the time, which we're going to talk about today in all the things that you do, not just in your endurance, but also in life. And we just like to remind ourselves we have this ability to just drop in just by taking just one. Is that me?
That turned out to be
what
me.
Was that?
That was a cell phone notification.
That's a phone next to the mic. I was like, I thought I was a fire in my apartment. Okay, good. I need to calm down a little bit more, like we all do. Okay. Thank you for turning that off, Brett. Right?
That was the meditation bell. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. All right, let's go. Empty the breath out, everybody. Let it go. We're already gonna have a lot of fun. I can tell. Empty. A little bit more. Push it out. Okay, take a big belly breath in. And then it fills up to the top. And then exhale nice and slow. Awesome. And come back. And hey, thank everyone for being here, for tuning in, for sharing our podcast, for helping us grow and becoming more mindful. All right, let's jump in. All right, Brett, thank you again. You've done some insane endurance challenges, from self-supported Ironmans to 22-mile swim across Lake Tahoe we talked about earlier. What has got you hooked on pushing limits through endurance sports?
Yeah, I found that I was doing shorter stuff, and then the fact when I tried to go longer, I wasn't good at it. Is an opportunity for growth, and instead of being upset and unhappy that I couldn't do it. I'm like, oh, I've got my next 5-year plan ahead of me because I should be able to do this. There's people like me that are doing this. The fact that I'm not good at it or can't finish one of these things means that I've got a problem to solve. That's fun, to look forward to for a while.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's an interesting definition of fun.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and part of my backstory is I went to Marine Military Academy, and that's the world's only Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps military school run by Marines, 100% of the time, all the time, and
And that's like high school, right?
yeah, it's high school.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a dedicated boarding school. It is intense, and they train you from a very young age to improvise, adapt, overcome, all that. Also, that you're bulletproof and invisible.
Yeah.
And,
Everybody, when they're that age, is bulletproof and invisible.
yeah,
Right?
and so that you actually can do almost anything, if you put your mind to it. And so with that kind of background, I found endurance sports to be so challenging. And also, I was a swimmer growing up. I played all kinds of sports growing up, but I excelled most at swimming, and I became a state finalist in sprint freestyle in Texas, which is a huge swimming background or big swimming state. So I was really good at going for 22 seconds, or 20 seconds. But the having to unlearn how to be fast and how to go long is a complete psychology, turning just everything upside down, and you only have so much physical ability, but everybody being a human, you are naturally an endurance machine just by being a human. And so it should be possible for you to go farther, longer. A lot of it's mental. And so what a project, to start working on. So, yeah. And what happened was I found out about podcasting. It was brand new. And then I work in IT. And I like computer stuff. And so I decided to try to figure out how to do my own podcast. Well, I listened to some at first. There was nothing about endurance sports at the time. And so I decided to start my own. And while I was starting my own, some of the podcast content out there that was early and still out there today, and it's fantastic, was lectures by Zen masters. So a Zen monastery, once a week, they tend to have some of the most highly trained thinkers, about how to handle life's problems, give a lecture for an hour, 2 hours or so. And back then, there's 4 or 5, 6 different shows. That was really just the recordings of Zen masters talking for about 45 minutes and then answering questions from the audience. And you really learn about how much these guys and women know about the thinking process and about ego and being attached to who you are and your identity, about how that's a problem and living in the future and in the past and like all this stuff. Because I don't have a good example of a question, but somebody in the audience would ask a question and you're like, oh yeah, answer that one, Mr. Zen Master. And then they do. And you're just like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And so I was listening to hours and hours and hours of Zen master and Buddhist like lectures. Because for people that don't know, Zen is a branch of Buddhism, and while on long bike rides and on long runs. And so just by osmosis,
You were listening to these while you're on the long bike rides.
just by osmosis, I was like learning all of this. And then I found that if I applied it to while I was doing endurance training, because while you're doing endurance training, it's you in the moment right now against whatever you're up against it. Low blood sugar, this hill, there's a famous Buddhist or Zen, I see you, Mara, is a famous Buddhist saying where the Buddhist version of the devil, tries to get Buddha to stop. And he says, I see you, Mara. And so So I see you, Hill. Is your current devil, and it turned out to be the most incredible, life-changing experience of becoming a better person. And then I started taking it into the work environment, and I manage a small group of IT based thing across the company. And I started implementing the Zen stuff that I was learning into managing people and managing my workflow, and then trying to manage work-life balance. And then it just kept going from there.
I recently went on another podcast myself and got asked by the host, hey, I'm not big into meditation, but I am big into running. And does running fall into, this is his question to me, does running fall into the mindfulness, or does it fall into the meditation space? And I said, it's actually kind of both. When you start, you feel good, and you can start to focus on maybe the sun on your skin and the wind blowing and the sound of the leaves, and you focus on all that. That's kind of the mindfulness aspect. But as you get further into it, and you want to stop, you want to turn around, and maybe your knees are starting to hurt and your lungs are starting to burn, that to me is when it becomes somewhat meditative. You tune out everything else and you just kind of tune into those things. So that's kind of tied to my question for you. So most people, they when they think about training for these crazy endurance races, some of which we mentioned at the beginning for you, and we'll dig into a little bit more here. Well, they think about suffering, but then you say that rather than suffering, the key is to relax into the effort, right? And I know that's tied to Zen. So I guess my question is, one, for some listeners who've heard the word Zen, you just mentioned it being a branch of Buddhism. Can you explain what Zen is? And then can you explain how using that Zen to relax into the effort, what you mean by that?
One of the shortest answers to what Zen is that it's direct experience right here and now. And then and not projecting, which there's a whole people know about. If you're thinking of a past that you can't change and a future that you don't know yet, then you're not in the moment. And there's a subsection of Zen, that uses koans, which is the unanswerable questions. And it's supposed to confuse you for a second and knock you out of your hypnosis of you thinking about things that don't really matter all that much. That's actually the whole point of a koan, is there is no good answer. It's supposed to be like, bam, like a wake up moment, right? And an Ironman or a 100-mile trail run race, every problem has a solvable solution. There's an answer to every single problem. You're getting tunnel vision, you're got low blood sugar, or you're feeling nauseous or nauseated, and you feel you got a blister, or you're getting sunburned. Every single thing has a solution. But you need to be in the moment to handle that solution right now and not think about, I'll take care of that, later. So you start to get a hot spot on your foot. You take care of that now, and not at the 3 miles down the road at the next aid station. So how do you live in the moment? And, yeah, that's the basics of Zen. Zen's kind of funny. Is a whole lot of Zen is what is Zen not. Zen is very much counterintuitive. Almost everything in the world is counterintuitive, and it's also the combination of Buddhism. When Buddhism moved from India to China already had a well-established Taoism philosophy. And Taoism is just go with the flow. Like nature has a natural flow. And if you try to fight the flow, if you're a surfer, do you guys surf at all? Did you ever surf? Yeah, you can paddle against the current and it's going to suck. Or you can work with the current and then get pulled out past the breakers and then surf in. You know what I mean? And
we did that in SEAL training all the time.
Yeah, you can use the the rip current.
The rip current.
Yeah, use the rip current to get pulled out past the breakers, then go
Yep.
sideways just a little bit, and then you can surf in and then use the rip current. My friends and I call it the conveyor belt to get back out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do that, and then all of a sudden you can surf all day, instead of fighting things. So when Buddhism met Taoism in China, it became Chan, and then the Japanese version of saying that is Zen. That's just how it gets translated. So it's a mixture of Buddhism is very much knowing who you are and being a realization of that life is temporary and all this stuff, and then there's not that life is suffering, but there is suffering in life. People get that confused, and also null, like not being able to answer questions is okay. Like not knowing the answer is fine. There's a mistranslation in Zen that can a dog have, there's a famous koan, can a dog have Buddha nature, which means can a dog be conscious? And I think a lot of people nowadays would say my dog's definitely conscious. But you can imagine hundreds of years ago that might have not been the answer, and like it's just but the answer back then, the answer is mu, M-U, which got translated incorrectly into no, dog can't have cancer. Actually, mu is null. It means I don't know. And being able to say that you don't know is a really grounding experience that puts you in the moment, and now you can learn because you don't know.
Right.
And so
the beginner's mindset, right?
Yeah. And then you combine this with the Taoism of the flow of like, you can try to plant this one thing in the winter, but it's not going to work, or you can try to get a cherry tree to blossom in the fall, but it blossoms in the spring. There's like nature has a natural flow of things. So if you work with the flow of things, then everything just starts to work out.
And so how does that tie into the relaxing in the moment in these endurance races?
This is a really powerful thing I heard one time, and I can't remember the author of the book, but he was writing a book about Ultraman, which is a nearly triple Ironman. And I've done one of those too. And I did that self-supported.
I don't even know how you do that.
That was hard.
Yeah. Well, what's the numbers on a triple Ironman? What are the numbers on that?
So you swim 10K, so 6.2 miles. I did open water, and then Rich Roll's famous for doing Ultramans, and you swim 10K and then immediately go and bike 90 something miles right after that, and that's day one. And then day two is 172 to 175 mile bike ride, and then day three is the Whopper. It's a double marathon.
Wow! So 3 days of that.
This author, in an interview, he said, I can put you like in a fighter plane, right? And get you really excited. And that's what races are like. You're flying around like in a dogfight and going really fast. And it's a lot of fun. But you got your hand on the controls and you're barrel rolling and all this. And he said, that's what it's like doing events up to the ultra distance, but not into ultra distance, right? And because you kind of know what you're getting into. What if I told you that there's a sport where I take you out of that fighter plane and launch you into space, into orbit, and not in the space station, but in a spacesuit floating, like with nothing to hold on to, right? And that's what doing ultra distance is like, because there's no way to train for an ultra distance event by doing the training. So if I'm doing a 100-meter swim, right? I can train for that by doing 100-meter swims. I can train for that by doing 500-meter swims. I can train for that. You can't train for a 100-mile trail run race by running 100 miles. That's not smart. It's just, you don't do that. You run like 18 to 20 miles. And you just do that a lot. So then on race day, you don't know what you're getting into. You're going beyond your knowledge and your experience, and you have to let go, and you have to relax. And like some of your previous guests have talked about, your previous guest was fantastic talking about the fear, right? Use the fear, but you get intimate with the not knowing what's going to happen yet. And that is the fun. That is, there's a guy right now that is an incredible cyclist. It's Lachlan Morton. And he biked all the way around Australia, the perimeter of Australia, like in 29 days. And he did the Continental Divide Trail, which is off-road, and broke the record on that. And he said that the whole point he does it is to go beyond what he knows about himself and then learn more about yourself. If you have any preconceived notion about how you're going to do at one of these things, then you're in trouble, right? You can only train so much. It's because you can only train so much that you are going to go into the void and find out about yourself. And you will find out a whole lot about yourself when you start. Let's say in your training runs for a 100-miler, you get up to even, let's say, 30 miles, Well, when it's mile 70 and it's 2 a.m. and the trees start moving and you see animals, you see dragons and stuff talking from sleep deprivation and stuff, like you can't train for that, right? And then you find out, and then when you're interacting with an aid station and people are trying to give you stuff, you find out a lot about yourself by how you treat other people when you're on your limits. And then you're like, man, I was really rude to that person. I started yelling at them because they had blueberry flavored gels and I wanted raspberry with no caffeine. And I really took out too much on this person about that, right? So now I got something to work on about myself.
Well, what's take us a little bit deeper into that mindset. I mean, you're at like the 30, the 50, the 60 mile mark on a 100-mile run. Yeah, and I guess it's difficult to physically prepare for that and mentally prepare for that, but I'm sure like the Zen was helpful in the sense of like bringing you, I guess, deeper into that moment, being with the reality of what you're doing, and then helping you move through it. So like when you're hitting those walls, it's like what are you telling yourself, or how are you managing that physical and emotional discomfort? How you imagine, managing the disorientation that you might be going through. You talked about, like, what are going through your mind in those difficult moments, and I would love to know. Yeah,
a little bit of what you try to do is have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, and rehearse it a lot so that when something goes wrong, I'm sure with your Navy SEAL training, John, like y'all probably had plan D, E, F.
Yeah, on missions for sure. Yeah, we had what do we call them? Branches and sequels.
Yeah, and so you have already a plan for almost everything that can go wrong, and then an exit strategy to do that so that you're not trying to solve too much in a race. You're not trying to solve too much. You try to do in training, experience as much as you can, like how to change a flat tire, how to fix a chain and stuff like that, so that you know how to do these things. And then when it happens in a race, then you say, oh, I got a flat tire. Step one is, to try to plug it. And step two is to try to, put an inner tube in, and, step three, stuff like that. And not get upset is actually a really big tip. And just kind of go through the procedures of a triage in a way. And then a lot of times it's taking the time just to stop and sit and think for a minute, like what's the best solution at this time. And people don't think, they think they got to act like right now, and you don't. You can pause and think about that.
A lot of time, if you act right now, you're gonna be fixing the wrong problem, right? Like, so I had a friend of mine who said, crisis management is basically figuring out what the worst problem is and then going after that first. But too many people just react and they start addressing all the problems. And by trying to do that, you actually end up addressing none of them. But if you can figure out what the worst problem is and then work your way backwards, that's how to fix crises. Granted, it's not really a crisis when you blow a tire. I guess it could be seen as a crisis if you're far enough in and you've been training long enough, but it's not life altering. But still,
yeah, you have to have perspective, and then also one of the famous things that you learn through Ironman training specifically is you will go through highs and lows, especially on the run, towards the end of the bike, and then on the run. So that for people that don't know, it's 2.4 mile open water swim, then 112 mile bike ride, and then a marathon in conditions that usually they would cancel any other marathon in, because you're starting at noon in the heat, like in Texas, when it's 85 degrees and 90% humidity or something like that. And they would cancel marathons like that. You're starting the marathon already really dehydrated, probably, and underfueled. And so you're going to have ups and downs, but after a while, you'll learn that while you're in a down, if you take care of the problem in the ways that are known to help fix that problem, slow down, take on more sugar, and just, try to stay cool, if it's a hot day, or warm up if it's a cold one, then seriously, in 20 minutes, you'll feel great again. And then you can just keep going again. It's a really good life lesson that everything's temporary, and you could probably keep going.
The longest race I've done is a half Ironman. I've done two, one of which you may be familiar with, the Super Frog, which is down in San Diego, in Coronado. What I've been told is that because you do a lot of the running on the beach, it runs like a full Ironman. The last one I did.
What's running in the sand?
Yeah, your calves really pay for that.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
God,
awful.
and your shins,
It's awful. You got part of it on the soft sand, and then the rest of it is on the, right on the beach where the sand is packed, but it's at an angle, so it's all sorts of difficult. But who am I telling about difficulty here with Brett?
Exactly. I got told to get out of the water at Coronado by the Baywatch yellow Ford Ranger truck with the mega. Yeah. I was learning how to surf, and I did not know the thing about blackball beaches. You're not supposed to surf.
Yeah.
Certain areas. And there I was surfing in the middle of a whole bunch of people, which turns out is really dangerous.
Yeah.
You could steer somebody with their surfboard.
Right.
Yeah.
And this loudspeaker on the truck goes, "Sir, get out of the water." I'm like, are they talking to me? I got to talk here
I'm sure you did.
Coronado. Yeah, that's great.
Yep. Yeah. But the last half Ironman that I did, I actually was kind of suckered into doing it against a buddy who ended up not racing against me, but it was down in Waco, Texas, and it rained for the swim and for the bike, and then of course the clouds opened up and it's sunny. This is September or October in Waco, Texas, so it's super humid. Now it's super hot. And I've run a bunch of marathons in the past, but like you said, those marathons normally start in the morning. It's normally cool, and by the time you finish, it may be warming up a little bit. But this was starting at I don't know, it's probably 80, 85 degrees already. And every aid station that I went to, they had ice, and I was like, I wonder what that's for. And I started grabbing some, and I was chewing it. And they're like, no, man, it's to put down your shirt and under your hat. And that's what I started doing that. And you're right, man. I went from being super angry and what the fuck is going on with my body here? And then taking the ice and dumping it down my shirt and putting it under my hat. And it made a world of difference. So every ice station, I was like, oh, this is so much better, so much better. Sorry, I digress, but I just wanted to go down that path about and I've only done the halves. So I can only imagine the Ultramans and the full Ironmans, what you go through in that.
Yeah, you find yourself way beyond what's really fun is you think that you're gonna do a race like this and perform XYZ. This is how you're probably gonna do. And boy, halfway into one of those things, you realize you were so wrong about yourself, right? you're so wrong about your abilities. And that's what I've learned. The one time that I've DNF'd from a race is I set a time goal. One time at a time. And that is a big, big mistake. Do not set a time goal unless you've done the race a bunch of times or something like that. Because then what you'll do, what you should do is train, in 10 years, 20 years, this will all be out of date, but with technology, but you train by heart rate, right? So you got your effort level, right? And then so you train just by effort and time. That's it. That's all you need to know to train. And so if you look at the results, right? So if a race is going to take 6 hours, if it's going to take 12 hours, if it's going to take 3 days, you look at how long it took somebody that's about average, probably that's somewhat like you, to do it. And then you train yourself to do, if I had to go that long, what heart rate would I do that at?
So this is the going easy to get fast that you talk about, right?
Yeah. So there's the whole science of training that if you train below a certain threshold, then you're actually you're building a whole lot of mitochondria that processes fat, body fat for energy. Body fat has twice to 4 times or something the amount of potential energy in it. And carbs, you only have so much stored, and you'll blow through your carbs in that's when people run marathons and they hit the wall, quote unquote, at mile 18, 20, that's when they ran the carbs. And they haven't trained their body's mitochondria to process the other reserves that they've got. But the only way you can train that, if you train hard, then you train the carb processing. If you train easy, then you train the fat processing. You need both. Or people that go all one way or the other, is not correct. But so like Rich Roll would say, famously, he told me, and a lot of us, it's not about who's the fastest. It's about who got really good at going fast at almost no effort. So if you train at like 120 heart rate endlessly, your body figures out how to go faster at 120 heart rate, right? And then you end up running, when you first start training, running an 8-minute mile would send your heart rate to like 160, let's say. I'm just making something up, but that's very typical, right? Okay, well, if you slow down and train at 125 heart rate is a better number, let's say 125 heart rate, at first you're going to be running a 10-minute mile, 11-minute mile, and needing to walk to keep your heart rate down. But your brain is always, and your metabolism is always, humans are like, we're so lazy because we're masters at efficiency. We'll like, let's say in programming, Bill Gates or somebody spend 10 hours, to save writing code so that something will save them 10 seconds, right? So your brain and your body will figure out over a few months how to do an 8-minute mile at 125 heart rate. So, and if you view that heart rate like an RPM gauge in your car and a heat gauge, then you will end up being able to imagine being able to run an 8-minute mile at 125 heart rate instead of 160. How farther you can go without being tired. And that's the secret of people that are really, if you look at the heart rates of people that are really good at going long, you'll notice their heart rates are really low for doing whatever, for the speed that they're going. Their heart rates are incredibly low. But the way to train that is you have to start training low and let the body figure out how to get faster while going easy.
Well, how about when you're not training like this and going super hard and suffering along the way? It's like, how has, your, so much time and energy and effort and mental fortitude you put into, being a accomplished endurance athlete. How has that like helped other aspects of your life? Like, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's at work, whether, it's trying to conquer some kind of problem that's in your life. Like, yeah.
It teaches you getting better at suffering long distances. But then also learning to like it a little bit, it teaches you that, well, one thing, you could be really great at it and win a whole bunch of like really great things, and nobody else in your life cares. So it's a really, really good ego lesson that, especially if you work in a work environment where people aren't, where I work, it's just a regular office environment. Hardly anybody here is an endurance athlete, right? They could care. They don't want to hear about it, right? So yeah, you got to keep it in check. And like, so it's a big ego, leveler, I would say. And then, um, the, one of the most interesting things is the people that you find yourself, becoming friends with, that do this kind of stuff turn out to be some of the most exceptional, wonderful, accomplished people, that you that that have done the most amazing thing. You're hanging out with a friend, and somebody will say, "Hey, this guy ran across Tennessee." You're like, "What?" The long way, right? Because Tennessee, that could be
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
one way.
It's
Yeah.
narrow or long.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, the long way. And I grew up in Tennessee for a few years. Like, I know what Tennessee's like, dude. That is rough. And so, the eastern half is really hilly. So the the people that you end up rubbing shoulders with, are really inspirational. And then you learn that, everything, well, like that whole thing where I said, you know, if if something's hard, it won't be hard for long, right? So my boss asks me to do a spreadsheet or a report or whatever. I know that if I just go through the steps, like with like real good training, and you fall in love with Zen, is also all about learning the process. Everything is the process. So with the tea ceremony, it's all about the process. And you learn to fall in love with the process. And if you execute the process correctly, then you get to the end result. And to not project into the future about, all this presentation I have to give in a month, right? You could get all worked up about that. Or if you say, oh, if I just break this down into the steps, like I did for my Ironman training program or swim across Lake Tahoe or something, then I know, that if I do these things, that by the time I have to do that presentation, I'll know everything and it'll be fine.
You said you went to the Marine Military Academy high school, and then you went to Texas A&M. I don't know if you've mentioned that since we actually hit record, but before we hit record, you were talking about being part of the Corps Cadets there. For our listeners who aren't aware, Corps Cadets is basically, if you think of it as a military academy within a standard college. Like I went to the Naval Academy, that is a military academy. There's nothing else. Nobody else there is going through regular college, going to parties. Whereas Brett, he's going to Texas A&M. He's part of the Corps Cadets, and then there's the regular college kids who are kind of doing their college thing. Um, and then on top of that, you were an Eagle Scout. We also talked about you being a Scoutmaster before we hit record. How have your time at the Marine Military Academy, your work for being an Eagle Scout, which I know takes an incredible amount of work and discipline, which is tied into doing this ultra work, being a Scoutmaster, the time at Texas A&M, how have these experiences shaped your endurance mindset and the discipline that's associated with that?
Yeah, there's Marine Military Academy was so hard. It's basically Marine Corps boot camp, but instead of being Marine Corps boot camps, maybe how many weeks long? Like
I think it's 12 weeks.
13.
12 weeks. And
13. My nephew went through recently. 13 weeks.
Yeah, it's 13
Yep.
weeks long. Well, this just never stops.
Wow.
And my personal drill instructor that you live in barracks it's a converted Air Force base, World War II Air Force base. So it is a real military base. My drill instructor had just retired he was the head drill instructor of Parris Island. And so, it was wild. Like it was really, really crazy but the discipline and the teaching you that you can do almost anything is just incredible. And I found that, when I tried to do my first Ironman and I was feeling like I was going to die out there, that it brought back that feeling. That was the first thing in 10, maybe 12 something years or longer, that made me feel like I was up against a challenge that was pushing me to my absolute limit, like when the hardest days at military school. And I liked it. And I was like, wow. I try to tell people all the time, if you want a challenge in life to see who you really are, um, there are these things out there going on every weekend all around the world that are endurance events, that will push you to your limit, and you will find out who you are. And there's no need to go join the Marines to figure out who you are. Try to train for 100 miler, and then you will find out about, you know, who, what you're made out of and where your weak points are. And then it's a much safer environment, right? You're not getting shot at. So,
Yeah. Hey,
so
we
and,
still want people volunteering to serve.
yeah,
We
so
still need that.
like you still need that, but it's like it's a safer environment to really push yourself to the edge and find out more about yourself. And so I highly encourage people before they make some major life change to go, hey, maybe all you need to do is just start signing up for some endurance stuff and really find out who you are by pushing yourself beyond who you currently are now. And that growth program is like, it's incredible.
You guys know Eric Thomas, the motivational speaker. He has I don't know if this is his, but I've heard him say it, something to the effect of, only those who risk going too far will know how far they can truly go. And that's exactly what you're speaking about, right? Like and funny enough, last week we had John Daly on. John is a Marine Corps veteran from the special operations side of Marine Corps. He does a lot of rucking, right? He goes long distances with a ruck on, and he talked about, never letting the body be in charge, always let the mind be in charge. And I've thought about it since we had that interview, and I think we mentioned General Patton saying something to that same effect. I've always thought it was the other way around. I've always, personally, in my experience, the mind wants to quit way before the body does. What are your thoughts on that, Brett? Like, do you think your body quits first? Do you think your mind wants to quit first? How do you explore your limits?
I've thought about this a lot. The If you've done something harder than what you're currently experiencing, then the mind is definitely stronger than the body, right? So, for those that don't know, I don't know if they still call this in the Marines, they call it PT, but I remember one time, I was being punished and I nearly passed out from doing push-ups and being screamed at, and it's 1,000,000 degrees and you have to do like all kinds of calisthenics and stuff like it's probably illegal nowadays, in the showers with them on full heat, the steam
That's
room
definitely
in
illegal
a
these
trench,
days.
yeah, in a trench coat, like all of y'all. And so like you're pushing you beyond. And so as long as nothing is that hard, like, like how hard you can actually go. So if you've run till your legs almost fell off and they actually kind of collapsed under you a little bit, then if that hasn't happened yet, then you can still keep going, right? So so that's the mind thing, you know. Um, Definitely, if you've done something harder than what you're doing right now, then definitely you can keep going.
And then flip it, if you haven't, which you've mentioned, basically that's how you train for these 100-mile runs, or we'll kind of jump into the 400-mile gravel bike race, right? So what does training look like that for that race? And then I guess you're not going out and riding 400 miles to train
Nope.
for this.
Heck no.
So in this instance, then
Yeah.
the mind is going to probably want to quit at the 100
Yes.
miles or wherever you've gotten to in the past. That's
Right.
where you've established this
Right.
is my limit. But
Yeah.
now that's when the body takes over and really
Yeah.
needs to run things.
Yeah. This one is really interesting, because I've never biked that far at once. And also, you're going to have to find food and water along the way. And you're going to have to navigate with GPS and ride at night with lights. And I've done a night mountain biking race with lights, but I didn't have to recharge anything.
Oh yeah, 400 miles, man.
Yeah, and I
What,
didn't
How
have
long is that
how
going to
long does
take?
that take? Just give me a reference point. How long would 400 miles take to bike? Like how many hours,
I bet
days?
you
Like what does that look
somebody,
like?
I bet you somebody, if they don't sleep, will probably do it in 24 hours.
Holy crap!
It's like
It's a
really fast.
long
I've seen like
time.
a pro
Yeah, that's
be able to do
ridiculously
it.
fast.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe more like 30 hours. And then, so I'm planning for 2 nights of other. Okay. So, but my point being that I can, I know there's a shorter version of the race. They have like different lengths that you can do. And there's one that's 287. And when I
That's
was
a sprint.
debating, yeah, well, so I'm debating, the checkbox, right? Which one
Yeah.
which one of these dumb things am I going to sign up for? They cost the same for this one race, the East Texas Showdown. It costs the same,
Mm.
whichever one you pick, right? So it makes no, right? So I can't justify, I'm going to do the shorter one to save money, right? And then I'm
What
like,
a mind fuck.
dude, talk about a mind fuck. You get at this race at mile 330 or mile 325, you get to the finish line, but you're not done yet. Your cards, everything's there. You have to go out. They call it the death loop. You have to go out and do another 70 miles. And the amount of people that quit, you know, at that race, and that's a strategy there too. Is what I'm really training for is so that when I get to there, to be ready to keep going. Right. Okay. But anyway, I'm not, I was like, I don't know if I know I can do I'm pretty sure I could do it if everything went right. Like if the bike doesn't break, or like I don't get injured or something like that, I could probably do the 287. Right. But then that doesn't send me into that orbit of like finding out more about myself. Right. To do something that we don't have many years left on this planet, all of us. Right. You only have so much time. And it's like, if I'm going to find out more about myself, I'm going to put myself in a situation that I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this thing. So I signed up for the 400 because I'm actually not confident that I can finish it. So when it gets really bad at mile 250, I don't have 30 miles to push on and could probably, figure that out. I've got another 150 and through the night, and then I got to figure this thing out. Fingers crossed, I figure it out and then we can keep going. And that's the fact that it scares me. Like back to your previous guest is like, go into the fear, and that is living. That is really living. If I do something that I know is safe, well, then it'll be a fun experience and stuff. But if I do something that I'm worried a little bit about whether or not I can finish this thing, and yeah, your previous guest, that was so fascinating that
Kristen Ulmer.
Yeah, you had like an addiction to fear
Yeah.
pushing. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
So,
She's remarkable.
Well, I mean, a little bit. They kind of get that, like a Marine Corps training. It's like, if something's scary, you attack. Like it's you're attack dogs basically in the Marines, and so, so it's like, yeah, the fact that I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this or not, and I'm going to have to figure it out along the way. And also, not even that, I don't even have the gear yet to do this thing. And so I'm like, this is going to push my social network of like asking people for extra gear to help out, for lights, for stuff. And I got a month, right? So I'm like, in a month, I need to get all the equipment together. And John, it made me think about you and Navy. I don't know hardly any. I've read lots of books about. I love the Navy SEALs. I think it's the freaking best. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL because I was such a good swimmer, and I went to Marine Corps school. But my vision is terrible. Like it's terrible. And at that time, what I was told was kind of like being a fighter pilot. You can't be a Navy SEAL and have like if I lose my glasses or my contacts out because I'm coming up out of the mud, I'm useless. I'm a liability to everybody else around me, right? So, but I've got to figure this thing out, and so I imagine with you guys like training to get ready to go on a mission, right? Every mission is unique, so you've got to like figure out all the equipment and all the maps and all this other stuff. But it's a lot of fun for us trying to figure out how to do an adventure race. Basically, is what it is in the end. How am I going to get this done? So I don't know how that answers your question.
Well,
But that's
that right there, thinking about everything that you need, thinking about the training that you've done, but the difference between the training that you've done and the actual race, thinking about everything that can go wrong, that there's definitely parallels there between everything that you just discussed and everything that we do in the SEAL teams. But that's meditation. That is mindfulness, right? Paying attention to what it is right here. What do I have right here in the now as far as training, capabilities, gear versus what do I need? And then, that also ties into life planning, right? But like, I know you're a coach. What do people need to hear from you as an ultra endurance athlete? And how does that endurance training, how can that meditation, if you will, quote unquote, tie into life planning?
Yeah. So what I do is every morning I learned this a little bit from GTD, Getting Things Done, which is a famous productivity tool. And then from just meditation, practical modern meditation is I spend at least 10 minutes, sometimes 15, in the morning. I did it this morning. I'll wear headphones and play some kind of meditation music or something, kind of block things out. And then I'll have a list in front of me, like a piece of paper to write down notes. And when you're, one of the tricks of Zen meditation is they think about nothing, right? Well, actually you can't.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the brain is a thinking machine, right? It's the things that you can't stop thinking about that are actually I wouldn't say they're holding you back, but it's your brain trying to tell you that you need to work on these things, right? So if you try to meditate and the thing that comes up over and over again, if you write it down, you'll notice that your brain lets it go, right? And then now by the end of 10 minutes, you've got like 5-6 things that are things to do today. One was to prep for our interview today. And then another one is, I needed to put on my work calendar. I was going to go to the dentist this afternoon, and stuff like that. And then, things that they're just in your subconscious, right? If you write them down, first thing in the morning, then what that does is it frees up your mind to actually solve problems here and now, because your brain is actually, if you don't write these things down in a trusted space, is what GTD teaches, then your brain is constantly holding on to these things and taking up cycles in your brain. And then in a combat situation or in a race situation or in a heated meeting at work, you can't be present in the moment where you're trying to patch a tire or something like that, because you're also thinking about, what time is that dentist appointment that I got today? And it is
like mentally constipated or something,
yeah,
like you're backed up,
it changes.
Sorry.
It changes your life to spend 10
Yeah.
minutes in the morning to, and then what'll happen is the craziest thing is eventually your brain will stop thinking of these things. It'll stop. And then when you'll notice at the same time that you'll take, without trying, you'll end up taking a big breath and then a relaxing breath. Kind of like when you're like, I've got a big dog.
Yeah,
Sitting there,
I was just thinking that same thing.
You'll notice every once in a while, you can tell they're really relaxed. They'll take a big breath and then just go like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Nice
Like
sigh.
really happy. When all the thoughts in your brain are written down that were bothering you that morning of things that you probably need to take care of today, pretty quickly after that, you'll have a big breath release. You don't force it. You just let it happen naturally. And then that's when you know that you're done. And then you go off into the day in this like Zen state of like, I've got everything handled because you've written everything down. That's a problem.
Yeah, I started journaling again. Like I feel like when I'm getting stuck or I'm getting that like maybe mental constipation when, I'm just holding on to too many things or, I'll start journaling, and I've been doing it for the last few weeks, and it just take like 20 minutes in the morning. And, I started part of my story is like I started morning pages to really start making some massive changes when I was like in my late 20s, and it really made a big difference. And so when it's just nice to have that space. And you're right. Like like instead of, think of that mental space, and all that, all those thoughts in your head, as energy. And when you take a time to journal, you can actually just let them out onto the page. So therefore and it's also, it seems like I am able to see them with a broader perspective and kind of a high level. So therefore, when those moments come up, when I need to make choices around those things, I can actually be more effective with, with those choices. Cause I'm not as emotionally attached, or I'm not like, the energy is outside. One thing that I also do, which it just for more intentionality, but also to just have more clarity as I step into the day, as I start setting my schedule the night before. So I'll just kind of time block off, like I'm doing X, Y, I'm doing this for 20, 40, 1 hour, whatever. And that's just been such a great way of just, like you're saying, like just being part of the day, and being with the day as it comes to you, trying to accomplish those tasks, without and not getting in your way, like emotionally, mentally, or as you may, if they kind of like sit inside you. And it's just been such a wonderful clarifying exercise for me that, I even did all last year. I did the 5-minute journal, so that it just asked me, gave me a quote for the day. It asked me like a few things I'm grateful for. What are some things that I want to do today or accomplish today. I can't remember the whole thing. And then at the end, at the night and the evening, they ask you like, hey, what did you learn today? Which is great. So just going back and just reading all those learnings, like you're just gaining more, perspective, gaining more wisdom as you kind of experience yourself in this way. So like and it's its own meditation for me in a lot of ways, like just journaling and just brain dumping. And as Julia Cameron would say, they're like morning pages, like, and it's, they're done in the morning, but it could be morning, like just morning that whatever kind of emotional shit that's coming up for you, and just letting it out and letting it move through. I mean, it's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. GTD is amazing. It's called Getting Things Done. Guy was actually a martial artist, and kind of realized this stuff, that the brain is for having thoughts, not for holding on to them. And then one of the things that makes humans so amazing is that we can actually outsource our brain. So I'm surprised I don't hear this more often, but the fact that you can write things down, that's a second brain. You can hold on to all the information, and then you can refer to it when you need it, right? But it needs, in GTD, they teach it needs to be in a trusted place. It's not, if it's like this Post-it note here and this notebook there, and then one in your car and one back at your house, and then it's no good. It needs to be like in a trusted space. And then if you write it there, then your brain will let it go. And then you can.
Yeah. I have a dedicated notebook that I sit every day with, and it's just there. I mean, I really, yeah, there is. It's almost like you're right. There's some sort of relationship that I have with it. It's a place that I can put my thoughts, put my feelings, and just like, and then just put them away. But like one more question, Brett. I thought, uh, you know, uh, what can you say to people that are just struggling to kind of get out of their way, and step into do something physical for themselves, that maybe not going and doing an ultra, endurance like Ironman kind of thing, but like, just to start to move their body around, and start to experience themselves in a more natural way, instead of just being, emotionally and mentally constipated, if you will, just by sitting around and stewing and doom scrolling all day.
Yeah, the first one is I would definitely start with what we just talked about, is spend 10 minutes. People that say they don't have time to meditate are actually the people that need to meditate more than anybody else.
Yeah,
That's right.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that'll get your thoughts straight for the day. And then the common denominator for endurance or not or anything is sign up for something. It could be a pottery class, something that's outside of your comfort zone, and then watch yourself. One fun one that I like to do is make some mental notes. You probably write it down in the journal of like what you think it's going to be like, and then after you do it, what it was actually like. And the difference is so amazing. Like, it wasn't going to be. It ends up not being anything like what you thought it was going to be like.
Yeah, which is, where we develop a lot of anxiety, is building up this idea of what X, Y, or Z is going to look like. We just had a friend and business partner, Dr. Teresa Larson. She's a physical therapist. She went through an improv class. And when she told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, that would be horrifying for me. I like public speaking, but it's public speaking on stuff that I'm prepared to speak about. But improv, that just sounds horrifying. But she had some anxiety about it beforehand, and then afterwards she was like, that was so much fun. And I'm sure we can all point at 100 examples, maybe 1,000 examples from our own lives about things that we anticipated being one way, and then afterwards we're like, that was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. But then we probably have some that were the other way too. But yeah, well, hey, Brett, this has been awesome, man. Really love what you're doing. I definitely want to start listening to your show. I mean, like you said, you've been doing it since 2005. And,
I have actually a little bit. I
Yeah.
love that you do it while you're on the road riding. And I was listening to the one of your latest ones about no method. And it was just
Method of no
awesome to
method.
hear. Yeah. It was just awesome to hear.
Yeah, once you
just
try
the
to define,
presentation of it.
yeah,
What's
once
that?
you try to define something, you've already limited it. Real quick, I want to give people some more inspiration. I swam across Lake Tahoe, having never seen it until the day before I swam it.
Jeez.
Wow.
And it's
That's
22
miles.
It's 1 mile longer than the English Channel. It's at high altitude. I trained for it at low altitude, and I went with
my God.
I went with an expert that had swam it before, so I'm kind of in a safe zone. And we did English Channel rules where you can't touch the boat. They got to throw you your food. So we're like otters in the water, like eating. And so the plan was every 20 minutes you eat and then you keep going. But the craziest, coolest thing was we started off in the dark on the southern shore, and then we had glow sticks tied to the back of our goggles. There's a ding. To the back of our goggles so that the kayak that was escorting us at first could see us, because we started at 4 a.m. And then as the sun came up, Jamie, who was the guy that was swimming it with me, I said, where are we going exactly? We were swimming by compass. Okay. And then, and that just shows you like the scale of this freaking thing, right? You can't train for it by swimming 22 miles. The most I swam 11 miles a day at the A&M pool 3 days in a row. So I figure if I could swim 33 miles in 3 days, I could swim 22 miles maybe in a day, right? And then I said, where are we going exactly? And he said, you see those two mountaintops? The craziest thing to ever hear while you're swimming. You see those two mountaintops and you see the saddle in the middle? We're aiming below that, but because of the curve of the earth, you could not see the far shoreline of where we were swimming. And there's a video on YouTube of when I finished. If you Google Brett Blankner swimming Lake Tahoe, there's me coming out of the water with Jamie, and then my son is real little. He's like 4 or 5. And another friend says, your dad just swam from over there. And to show you, other people don't care. My son goes, no, he didn't. And then hits me with a stick.
Yeah.
I lay on the ground.
You're just dad.
You're just, yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out there, that like you can do things that with some prep and some training that are way bigger than what you think if you're careful and you have some guidance. So listen to y'all's show and get some guidance.
Yeah. I mean, again, just got to stretch a little bit out of that comfort zone, a little bit more every day. And all of a sudden you have a broad, zone of discomfort, comfort, if you will. And all of a sudden you just like what I can imagine, when I start doing really hard shit, like I just feel great. I just feel like, wow, I really can't accomplish anything. You just talked about Dr. T, like stepping on stage and like, just putting it out there. We were all of us were inspired by Kristen Ulmer, and that's her message. And here you are, Brett, like saying the same thing. It's just like, get out of your comfort zone, because that comfort zone is where you suffer. It's where your like life is passing you by. It's where you start doubting yourself. It's where you develop these negative beliefs. It's where you develop these shitty habits of like, instead of going out there and doing something with your life, you just, lock into social media, or, you're numbing in some other way with some other substance or something. So we all have this ability, and it does take a little bit of inspiration. It does take a coach. I mean, if you want to go down that route, I highly recommend it, because that's the person's going to hold you accountable and push you forward and keep you inspired as well. It's all possible. It's just like, Brett, please.
Yeah, and a better answer to earlier when you asked me how does it affect your daily life when you've done endurance stuff that's like so big and so, but you work your way up, right? You work your way up to this kind of stuff. But anyway, so half Ironman, then like an Ironman, and then if you're really crazy,
Yeah,
like
exactly. Or just
or
it could be a
and then,
5K to a 10K to like right.
yeah. But the way it affects your daily life is because every day there's stuff that sucks and that's hard. You know, you get a bill that you can't afford to pay right now. Somebody in your family gets cancer. Somebody gets laid off. You get assigned a project that you're like morally against. You know, or like, what do I do with these situations? You know, or like the timelines really, it doesn't come once you know yourself and that you know that if you just apply and go through the process, stuff like that, that you can actually work your way through it. And that's the benefit. So.
Wonderful. Great way to close, Brett. And
Yeah.
if you want to get to know yourself a little bit, we have our meditation course starting April 27th, 9-week live. Sundays at 4 p.m. We're going rocking from April 27th to June 29th. And that's a great way just to tap in and, see all the beautiful things that you are, but also get to know the shit that's inside too.
And follow Will on Instagram.
That's right.
Dude, thanks.
You're awesome,
thanks, Brett.
man. Yeah.
I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah,
I thank you for that. That's cool. Keep commenting.
That's where this show started, man, was on Instagram Live.
Instagram.
I got to come back real quick and then we'll wrap up.
No, all good.
Training in a pool, swimming 11 miles a day sounds way worse to me than swimming 22 miles across. Fuck that. That has got to be meditation.
You talk about like life in a day, right? Because all these people come and swim and then go, right?
Yeah.
How long is 11 hours in the pool?
So there's like this young couple that's kind of like fooling around and acting silly in the lane next to you. And then there's some kids over here, and then an entire Texas A&M, which is Division I school, swim team practice goes on.
And you're swimming that whole time.
And then another swim practice. And then the club team comes and swims, and you're still going and going. And eventually, finally, a lifeguard will say, "What are you doing, dude?"
You're like, I'm a fish. I got lost. I found my way into a pool.
Yeah.
I'll be back tomorrow.
That's incredible, man. Well, Brett, this has been a lot of fun, man. For people who want to find you on Instagram or wherever, social media, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so I'm still Zen Triathlon on Instagram. And then because my son started racing pro mountain bike and we started doing these gravel races, I actually changed the name of the show to Zen and the Art of Endurance. But if you Google Zen and the Art of Triathlon, you'll still find me. But it's now called Zen and the Art of Endurance because I've always done big, like the Tahoe thing or running ultra marathon. And I think if you do those, and my YouTube channel, I've started doing a whole lot on YouTube as Zen and the Art of Endurance or Zen Endurance. But the podcast is Zen and the Art of Endurance.
Right on, man. We'll make sure all that is in the show notes when this comes out in a couple of weeks. But Brett, I also offered you at the beginning of the show, and I'm going to offer you again, but no pressure. If you would like to wrap the show up with the grounding practice for the three of us and for our audience, I'll turn that over to you. Otherwise, I'm happy to take it. Let me know.
Yeah, let's pause and rest for a little bit and try not to think of anything. And we can go ahead and start now. Close your eyes and try not to think of anything. And notice that you still think of things. And those things are the things that your brain, your body, your heart and soul know that you actually really need to take care of. So let's say like 30 seconds and sit there and think of the things that pop up while trying not to think of anything. Okay. Wow. If you're able not to think of anything, then you're either amazing or brain dead.
Yeah.
And or very accomplished. Yeah. And then another tip is I take with me on all my workouts, even to the edge of the pool, I take my phone and I have my notes app open. It's a really good meditative practice. And so I'm swimming like a long swim set and something comes up the next time I stop at the wall to take a sip of fuel or something like that, I'll write that thing down in my phone. And then when I run, same thing. I start running or biking, and I actually have the notes app open on my phone, because it's like shower thoughts. The things, you really need to do, you think of at totally the wrong time. And so if you have your notes app open, you can actually write those down, and it'll change your life.
Yeah. Now you can just
Great tip.
tell the phone, voice record it, and they'll turn it into a note for us.
And the latest watches by Garmin and Amazfit have voice memo in them.
Really?
Record.
That's pretty cool.
Phoenix 8 and the Tactics.
Yeah, I've got the Phoenix 5 here.
That's what I got too. So I'm stuck. But you can actually record a voice memo.
That's cool.
While you're running or while you're biking or something like that. Yeah.
Right on.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, brother, this has been awesome. Will, I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up, my friend.
No, hey, just big thanks. We could probably talk all day. Like, my God, but I really appreciate you coming in, Brett. You're just a very impressive individual with all the things you've accomplished, and one of the longest podcasters of all time. Like, period. Like 20 years. I don't know. Man. Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, thank you everybody for listening. Check out the meditation course. It's starting to fill up. And thank you for being part of the show and looking to sponsor the show. I really appreciate your support.
Indeed.
So, and again, Brett, thank you. John, always great to see you.
You too.
And bye, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
Yeah. Until next time, everyone. Take care. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.